Hello everyone, I'm Samantha Jung-Fielding and I wanted to talk to you about my experience with intermittent fasting. But I want to make clear up front that I am no medical expert, nor have I qualifications in the field of nutrition. This is simply my personal experience and the fact that I nerd out on any ways that could potentially give me an edge. So why would I even need an edge? Well, in my spare time, I started to do pole dancing 4 years ago. The idea of appearing even on stage was anathema to me. But then I kind of got the bug. And once I'd done a showcase and figured out that I actually could do it without passing out, then came the opportunity to compete. And I knew I would be competing against people who are half my age, if not even less than that. I'm 56 years old. So the possibility of going on to win was probably a little remote. But I thought, what could I do that would help to at least give me my very best opportunity? So when I first heard about intermittent fasting, it seemed like it couldn't hurt to give it a go. Did you know that the average human consumes their food over around 15 hours every day? So that's talking the standard 3 meals a day plus a few snacks. It tends to edge out to be about 15 hours. But sadly, the average human doesn't have such a good health return. And I wonder if the two might just be connected. When we're looking around the world, average human lifespan is in the 70s. It depends on which country you're living in, but we're talking somewhere between 71 up to 76. Whether you're a boy, whether you're a girl, it all counts, but still into your 70s. Now, that's a massive improvement on what it's been in the past, but I guess there's still an opportunity to look at how it could be better. Now, the thing that seems to really vie against how well we're doing from a longevity perspective is how many chronic diseases there are in the world. And the top 10 are as follows: arthritis, asthma, back pain, cancer, cardiovascular challenges, so things like high blood pressure, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, kidney troubles, pulmonary and respiratory issues, mental problems, and osteoporosis. Now, I don't know how many you've just ticked off, but looking at that list, I've got at least 4 of those things going on. And so with aging, my concern was that it might just get worse. So once I heard that Plato had said he fasted for mental and physical efficiency. And let's face it, he probably knew what he was talking about from all those years ago. But then I discovered that a current day neuroscientist was promoting the benefits of intermittent fasting. I thought it might be worth finding out a bit more for me. So Mark Mattson, who is professor of neuroscience at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in America, he did a really famous TED Talk back in 2014. Now, I didn't come across intermittent fasting until 2020, but following on from his TED Talk, there became the idea that there were some diets people might want to follow. And so intermittent fasting kind of became the latest fad. Why was that? Well, from a scientific perspective, when we eat any food, it immediately is stored in our liver as glycogen. And we have to deplete our supplies of glycogen in the liver before we can burn any fat from our adipose cells. When we do get into fat burning, excuse me, that produces ketone bodies. And that's an alternative brain fuel. And so it's from this perspective that Mark was doing his presentation. He was talking about the way that we could perhaps age better and reduce our potential for disease. And he flashed up some really interesting diagrams in his presentation. I'm going to show you one now. So here he's talking about Intermittent fasting promoting fat burning and producing beneficial ketones. And he links it to the different parts of the body that are going to benefit. So his immediate push was on the brain, and obviously mine was on the muscle, because what I was looking at as a dancer was how I could ensure that I was going to reduce potential for inflammation and get the most bang for my buck with anything that I was eating, to help my muscles to really work hard when I needed them to do so. So although I liked what it is that Mark is saying, that wasn't what did it for me. Let me show you a different diagram. I was sent this diagram attached to a study around intermittent fasting because I'm part of a group of psychologists, coaches, counselors, and we share information that can help ourselves but can help our clients. So when I saw intermittent fasting produces oxidative stress, or a hypothesis around oxidative stress, should I say, it affects your circadian rhythm and puts the body into ketosis, I started to perk up. If you look down at the bottom of each of these, under oxidative stress hypothesis, it was the idea of less inflammation. That really caught my eye. The circadian rhythm produces optimized energy metabolism. Now you're talking my language. And with ketosis, reduced adipose. So basically the idea that you could burn fat and therefore tone your body to look more attractive. Never hurts when you're going on stage as a pole dancer. How Mark describes it is that fasting is a challenge to the brain, because if your brain is without food, this activates the adaptive stress response pathways so that you can cope with the stress of no food, but you can also resist disease. Now, I really quite liked the idea of that, and I wondered what the benefits were that Mark was going to enumerate. So he talked about altering your liver metabolism. So why would you alter your liver metabolism? Well, it's a metabolic switch that can improve your glucose regulation, increase your ability to resist stress, suppress inflammation in the brain and body, and upregulate your autophagy. That's where your body is able to repair your DNA, your molecules, after any oxidative stress. That was the first item that we saw in that second diagram I showed you. So basically, in short, your brain and your body is going to work better. Oh, I'm loving the sound of that. Now, apparently, it all comes down to the timing of your food. Our fabulous Ali has told us from the very beginning of working together in this community that for metabolic health, we should have a 12-hour fasting window. And when you start looking into intermittent fasting, 12 hours might be all that you do. You just ensure that while you're sleeping, for 8 of them, and a couple either end, you're not having any food or drink that contains calories passing your lips. So it's super important, if you're thinking about fasting at all, that you remain hydrated. And for this, water is your friend. You can also intake coffee or fruit teas. No worries there. But the idea is that no calories are going to be intaken, and therefore all of your organs are going to have the time to rest. So why do we want them to rest? Well, when you have anything that's calorific entering your body, it's going to kick off hormones into your bloodstream. So you can either have leptin, which is the hormone that says, thanks, I'm full, enough food. Or if you've been fasting, then you're going to have ghrelin, which is the I'm hungry, go and eat more. Now, preferably. Now, the challenge that we are facing is that we don't actually want to be eating more if we are fasting. And over time, although it sounds counterintuitive, your body gets used to having that release, but not responding. And ghrelin, obviously, in your bloodstream is going to be a different response hormonally to leptin in your bloodstream. The improvements that this can give you are weight reduction, blood pressure dropped, cholesterol lowered, blood sugar regulated, and inflammation suppressed. The first three weren't that big a deal for me, but I've always had challenges with my blood sugar and I've had inflammation issues since I was in my teens. So that was really what it was that caught my eye. So how long am I going to fast? Am I going to look at 12 hours a day or some of those other protocols that I'd seen advertised with people talking about massive success? So let's just have a look at what the differences could be. Whatever the length of time we're doing, we're giving our body the time for its biological functions to just abate, and potentially the switches inside your body to, I'd like to say switch on or switch off, but actually it's more of a dim function. So we want those functions to just slow down enough so that your body gets to recover. The recovery is the cellular cleanup that we've already mentioned. That was autophagy. It's the fat burning that we really want to get going, fat rather than glycogen from your liver. And it's the impact on your hormones. For me, obviously, the insulin, but also on your sex hormones. The challenge that we all have when we have our menstrual cycle is that whole, I need to eat now, and preferably chocolate, bars and bars of it. Or if you're like me and it's menopause, then your hormones get dysregulated again. And the problem that I've had with that is it's really hit my blood sugar metabolism. So now there's a potential that I'm even pre-diabetic because I've developed insulin resistance. So lots and lots of lovely issues that are around our hormonal balance. And therefore, if we're able to give our body an opportunity to do our hormones differently, why wouldn't we? So intermittent fasting for me, that was another reason why I thought it would be a good plan. Okay, so now we're understanding that either 12 hours or longer are necessary to allow these bodily functions to just abate somewhat and therefore give ourselves a biological function recharge. Why would we do 12 and why might we do maybe 16? Because that's what I did. I did 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating. And it's that window that you're going to choose that you've got to decide whether it's going to work well for you. So I liked the idea of 16 hours off eating, 8 hours of eating. And so for me, it was all around experimentation. And if you heard my presentation when I talked about sticking to it, my whole attitude is one of experimentation. That's how I approach life. I think we have the most fun when we experiment. So for me, I cut out breakfast. That's how I got started. And so I didn't worry about originally making it a whole 16 hours of not eating. I was just stretching my 12 to see if I could get to 16. And it ended up over a couple of weeks that I found it really easy to not eat until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then I could concentrate my eating from my first meal at around 1 or 2 o'clock, and then still eat after I had come back from my training, because all of my pole fitness training is in the evening. And I don't usually finish and get back home again until around 7:30 or sometimes even 8:30, depending on the timing of the class. So I needed to have a later start in my eating. One of the other ways that you can experiment, and I've done this as well, is that you can bring your eating forwards. So you can start eating at 8 in the morning and finish eating, for example, by 4 in the afternoon, if you're going to be doing the 16 hours of not eating and 8 hours of eating. Why would you do that? Well, studies just at the beginning of this year have shown that for people in my situation trying to control blood sugar, eating earlier in the day actually gives you better blood sugar control overall. So that may be a thought for you. But the other thing that I tried was switching my meals around so that when I started eating, I had my heavier meal, even though it was later in the day, and my lighter meal after that. I didn't just stick to 2 meals a day because for me, this wasn't about reducing my overall calorific intake. This was about finding a way that I could eat comfortably, that I could eat without kicking off any negative sensations. So I didn't want bloating. I certainly didn't want farting. I didn't want any of those things going on whilst I was in the studio. So I found that by eating earlier, my main meal, and having a lighter meal later with potentially a snack in the middle worked better for me. So your intermittent fasting window is what you have the opportunity to fill, and you choose how you're doing it. And the how you're doing it is just as important as how long you're doing it for. What we've spoken about through the whole of A Fresh Year of Freedom has been the mix of foods that you're eating. So it's really important to stay hydrated. It's a great idea to have whole grains in there and actually to follow the directives that Ali gave us right at the beginning about the way you fill your plate. Because then you're really feeding your metabolism. And yes, there is a possibility that some of the foods that you're going to eat are going to immediately produce glycogen and be stored in your liver. But the fact that you're then giving yourself the window means that your glycogen will be depleted and your fat burning, if that's what you're looking for, is going to come on whilst you're in your fasting phase. So is all of this just scientific studies that Mark did on some rats and mice in his clinic? Well, actually, there's been human studies too, because of course, certain religions have Ramadan, and therefore the people that are following the fasting that goes with Ramadan are not eating for up to 18 or 19 hours a day. So there's been evidence from those human trials that have backed up the information that has come out from the animal studies that Mark set off with in his clinic. I think it's a fascinating subject, and you have to make the decision for yourself. So what I wanted to do was talk to you about how it could work so that you can see whether or not fasting for longer than the original 12 hours that Ali recommended for us all may be something that you want to include. And it may not, and that's absolutely fine too. But of course, one of the things that I've also done is I've supported myself throughout this entire journey with the Healy frequencies. And so which ones would I recommend that you include if you're going to be looking at doing some more experimentation with intermittent fasting? Well, I've used the meridians ones quite a lot, specifically hormonal, liver, spleen, and pancreas in the meridians section. I've also gone into the digital nutrition, which comes with the Pro edition of your wearable Healy. And obviously, when I'm doing my training sessions, I've used a lot of the fitness programs too. And I've spoken about strength, I've spoken about endurance previously, and also weight, because I found those to be particularly supportive for me. But what we're talking about here is a very individual response. Individually, I wanted to give it a go. I experimented and I found what worked for me. And I thought you might want to see a couple of the results. So this is me in my first national competition, and I am holding on to the pole with one knee that is pulled back with my hand and with the foot from the other leg. I absolutely adore this photo. And people ask why I have red hair. That's the reason. This is this year's competition, so the 2023 competition. And this position is called Superman. And it's one of those where you actually have to roll over on the pole. So I was actually facing towards the ceiling and I have to do a twisting movement where I'm holding on only with my legs and one hand that turns me into Superman. You can see there, I'm pretty proud of the calf muscles in the backs of my legs. And I'm also quite liking the look of that arm. Let's not forget the tummy, those abs. In this photo, I am holding on entirely with my legs. And so I absolutely love this because if you look at my back, you can see the work that I've done to develop my muscles there too. So there's been a lot of intensive training that has gone into me being able to perform. I worked for 8 weeks to be able to get on stage and do this. To take full care of yourself, note that intermittent fasting is not recommended for people below the age of 18, nor for anyone who is pregnant or breastfeeding or with a history of an eating disorder. Aside from those final recommendations, remember this is my personal experience, my journey, and I hope that if you give intermittent fasting a go, you'll have as much fun with it as I have.